Welcome to the Great Basin Smoke Dispersion Briefing for November 10th. This is Gina McGuire. Over the last 24 hours, we've seen dry conditions with no precipitation across much of the west. Also, over the last 7 days, the image on the left shows very little precipitation in the Great Basin, with the only exception being a few light showers over parts of eastern Utah and over the central Idaho mountains. However, over the last 30 days, the image on the right shows well above normal precipitation over much of the Sierra into western Nevada, stretching northeast across northern Nevada up into Idaho, Wyoming, and far northern Utah. However, areas over the southern half of the Great Basin have been much drier, seeing well below normal precipitation. The water vapor satellite loop from this morning shows strong high pressure dominating much of the west, with generally clear skies and well above normal temperatures. However, we will see some moisture move in from California and the northwest across the northern half of the Great Basin, bringing just some cloud cover to those areas. Now looking at the weather pattern for this afternoon. Again, generally dry conditions across much of the west, including the Great Basin, with only some cloud cover moving across underneath the ridge of high pressure. However, under the ridge of high pressure will continue with well above normal temperatures and also light winds, which will also lead to poor dispersion in most areas today. If we look at the transport winds and mixing heights for today, you can see the light winds in the shades of blue and yellow in the map on the left, and also the relatively low mixing heights over much of the Great Basin, especially across western and northern Nevada and up into the northern half of the area. If we move on to Friday, we do start to see moisture move across the area. However, this will mainly be in the form of mid and high level cloud cover with very little chances of any precipitation. We may see slightly higher wind flow over parts of the western and northern areas of the Great Basin with this moisture, and therefore we may see some areas see improving dispersion over parts of Idaho and into Nevada, but still relatively poor dispersion over the southern and eastern side of the Great Basin. The transport winds, the image on the left, shows these increasing winds over parts of Idaho into northern and western Nevada. However, wind gusts will generally be between 20 and 25 miles per hour at times, with wind direction out of the southwest. Mixing heights also may improve somewhat over southern areas of the Great Basin, but still remain relatively low over areas further north. By Saturday, we still see this moisture moving across in the way of cloud cover, with generally westerly flow across the Great Basin, and also this will allow the high pressure ridge to move further east and temperatures to start cooling as we move towards the weekend. They still will likely remain near to just above normal, especially over the southern two-thirds of the area. With this moisture and some westerly flow, we may again see some improving areas of dispersion over parts of the northern half of the Great Basin, but still some fairly poor dispersion under light winds over the Arizona Strip into far southern Nevada and southern Utah. Transport winds show that winds will be decreasing over parts of Nevada, still may be somewhat breezy along the Sierra front and over the central Idaho mountains, but again wind gusts between 20 and 25 miles per hour with local gusts around 30 miles per hour. Also, mixing heights will be improving over parts of western and central Nevada and up into Idaho, and over parts of the higher elevations of central Utah. If we look at the Utah Forecast Clearing Index over the next few days, and you can see some improvement from today as we move from today through Saturday, especially across western and central Utah and in the southeast, especially in the higher elevations. Still over northwest portions of the state, the clearing index will remain relatively low. If we look at our forecast amounts of precipitation over the next few days, and again, much of the moisture that's moving across the Great Basin will be in the form of mid and high level cloud cover. However, we may see some light showers over parts of Idaho into Wyoming. As we move into Sunday, we still have high pressure nosing in off the west coast, bringing very dry conditions to the southern two-thirds of the Great Basin, with generally westerly flow and storms targeting the Pacific Northwest. This will allow some moisture to start moving in again to the northern areas of the Great Basin. Ventilation indices will still remain relatively low over the southern half of the area under the ridge of high pressure and may start to improve further north. By Monday, we see a little bit stronger westerly flow move into Idaho along with some moisture bringing some shower activity, but still dry conditions and relatively light winds further south. Therefore, we'll see increased dispersion over parts of Idaho into Wyoming and in the far northern portion of Nevada and Utah, but still relatively poor dispersion in areas further south, still under the influence of that high pressure. By Tuesday, we start to see southwest flow start to increase over parts of western Nevada up into Idaho, and this will allow for improved dispersion, especially in these areas, but still again fairly low ventilation indices further south as we still are under very dry and warm conditions with slightly increased winds. By Wednesday, we see finally this trough of low pressure move into the west coast, and this will bring better chances of more significant moisture for the northern half of the Great Basin as we get towards the middle of next week. This will also allow for improved dispersion more significantly, especially over western and northern Nevada, up into western Idaho, and we'll even see these effects further south and east as those winds increase as the trough of low pressure moves in. Looking at the overall forecast amount of precipitation, and this only includes from Sunday morning through Tuesday morning, you can see most of that precipitation is focused over the central Idaho mountains, with more significant moisture further north and west into the Pacific Northwest. However, as we get towards the middle of next week and towards the end of the week, we'll see much of this moisture spread further east and south into the Great Basin. Looking at our 8 to 14 day outlook, which takes us into the third week of November, you can still see above normal temperatures in much of the area, but now we're seeing a better chance of above normal precipitation across the Great Basin as we see a change in the weather pattern. That concludes our briefing for today. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us. Thank you for listening.